I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:12. I apologize for the delay. We had some issues with technology. So welcome everyone. There are no additions to the agenda. I ask, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I don't see any, so we can move right to delegations and presentations. Tonight we have two presentations. The first one will be Stantec Servicing Master Plan. And we have Jeff Paul here to walk us through that report. I'm going to turn mine off, and then when it's off, you can push your button, it'll turn red, and the floor will be yours.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for having me this evening. I'm going to take a little bit of time to go through the findings of the servicing master plan. So we've been working on this plan for a while, and got some conclusions for council to take a look through. There is quite a lot to this plan, so I may go through it a little quickly. So I apologize if I might pace me a little bit quick, but there's quite a lot to go through this evening.
Just one quick question. Do you want to be like raise a hand, or do you want to wait to the end? Or what is your preference with regard to questions?
I'll probably take questions at the end if that's okay with council. So yeah, I guess in that way I'll just speak to agenda here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the servicing master plan. Talk a little bit about growth and some of the projections that we use for growth in the plan. I'm going to go through all of the projects that we are recommending in the plan. And we're going to talk about this in terms of each of the settlement areas. So we're going to go through some of the hamlets. I'll go through some of this fairly quickly. And then we'll spend a little bit more time talking about some of the larger settlement areas, obviously Arvadella, Edgerton, Polka. We'll speak a little bit about solid waste. I'm going to speak a little bit about some next steps and what's still to come, and then we'll take questions and comments at the end. So the servicing master plan, I guess the first thing I want to speak to here is that in terms of what we studied with this study was we looked at 4 areas of service for the municipality. So we looked at water, specifically the distribution system, the supply system, and the storage system. We looked at wastewater, collection and treatment. We looked at the stormwater management system, and we also did look at your solid waste collection as well. And I want to talk a little bit about what the purpose of the plan was. So what are we trying to accomplish with this plan on behalf of the municipality? So we obviously wanted to go through all of these servicing areas and just determine if there are any existing deficiencies in your existing system. Is there anything that you're having struggles with right at the moment? From that, we also wanted to then look at growth pressures. You have a significant amount of growth. I'm going to touch on that in a second here, but it was a significant amount of growth happening in the municipality. So what is the result of those growth pressures, and what projects do you need to plan for going forward into the future? With those projects, those proposed projects in hand, we wanted to give you an idea of what the cost of those projects would be, so you can plan accordingly. A lot of these costs will obviously feed into your budgeting cycles. It'll feed into your upcoming development charge studies and give you information on how to deal with those projects and how to budget for them. And the last piece here is that under this master plan, we're doing this under the municipal class EA. So our intent with the master plan was to go through the class EA steps in terms of consultation and in terms of documentation and evaluation, so that you have satisfied the class EA requirements for the projects that we're proposing. I will give you a little bit of a spoiler here, is that there is one project that will have to do some additional study, but the intent here is that we've gone through all of the steps so that those projects can then proceed to design and construction after the master plan is wrapped up. I'm going to speak a little bit here about how we did the study. So obviously we did a pretty exhaustive look at your existing servicing. We looked at a lot of your studies, a lot of your reports, and a lot of the monitoring you've got for a lot of your systems. We had a lot of discussions with staff about servicing priorities and operational constraints. And then we looked at growth forecasts. So I'm just going to speak about this a little bit more in the next slide. We looked at what are your forecasts for growth, and the time span for this project or for this servicing master plan was to look at growth out to 2046. So I want you to keep that in mind, that everything we're talking about here is projecting for growth out to 2046 or another 22, 23 years out. From that, we then identified a list of constraints. I'm going to define sort of or use an example for a constraint. So as an example, a constraint would be, we're looking at growth in Delaware, or specifically maybe in your employment lands. The constraint would be, we're looking to service that with municipal servicing. We're looking to service that with sewers and treatment facilities. So that's your constraint. You have a planned growth in Delaware in your employment lands, and your constraint is, how do we service that? Going from there, then we look at a list of potential alternative solutions, and we evaluate those solutions. So solutions, again, for that example would be, do we do nothing and we don't service those lands? Do we build a sewage treatment plant in Delaware? Do we send flows to Kamoka? So we look through that list of alternatives. We evaluate those alternatives. We go through a variety of criteria, not just financial, although financial is obviously a large consideration. We look at environmental concerns, social concerns, technical issues, and evaluate it from several different dimensions so that we can come to the best solution that we can recommend for the municipality. And then, of course, from that evaluation, then we would recommend a preferred solution for that constraint. So that is essentially the process we go through, as we identify the constraints, we look at alternative solutions, and then we come to a preferred solution. Today, I'm going to speak specifically about the preferred solutions. Obviously, if council has any questions about alternatives that we looked at, I'm happy to entertain those. But it would take way too long to go through all of the alternatives we considered. This presentation will speak specifically about going through that process and what we came up with in terms of the preferred solutions. I'm going to speak a little bit about those projections here. This is engineers like to talk about stating their assumptions at the start. So I'll call this this is stating our assumptions. We did pull together some growth assumptions. Again, this is projecting growth out to 2046. So this is the basis of our plan. And we did a little bit of a mix of data here. You have obviously we have the more recent studies that Watson and Associates did in terms of your growth projections. We also had 2021 census data. So we actually had a sort of a starting point at 2021. Our data was a little bit of a mix of both data sources to then make those projections out. And I think you can see here, in terms of this first chart here, in terms of residential growth, and you already know this very well, I'm sure, that substantial amount of residential growth out to 2046. We're looking at a near doubling of the residential population in the municipality. We also have a substantial amount of employment growth that's occurring. I'll just point out a couple of numbers here. Yeah, we have a potential growth out here to 5,100 jobs between 2021 and 2046. So a substantial amount of growth that we have to account for in the plan and plan for in terms of projects that we need to prepare for. I also want to note here is that a lot of our study work assumes linear growth. So when we make our assumptions, we assume that you'll have an even year-over-year increase in population. Obviously, that is not what will actually happen in reality. You've already seen this, you'll see some communities that will have anemic growth and some communities that will have explosive growth. What we tried to do here is to use a linear growth rate so that we could then project when the projects will come online. So we'll talk when we get to some of the projects about specific years when we feel those projects will be necessary. But the actual plan itself will speak more to technical triggers. It'll talk to both flows and flow rates and things like that as the actual triggers of the project. So some of these projects will happen earlier than the plan may. may recommend, and some will happen later because those actual flow rates will actually get triggered. So I just want to be clear is that yeah, with the assumption of linear growth, the actuality sometimes it doesn't meet the theoretical. Okay, so a little bit of background there. Let's get into some of the meat of this. I'm going to speak a little bit about some of the hamlets that we looked at. I'll go through some of these fairly quickly. I just wanted to give a bit of a brief overview of a lot of these hamlets and some of the servicing situation for each of them. Obviously, I'm sure council is very familiar with this, but just to say that obviously we looked at each of these and what this current servicing situation is for each. So for Ballymount, we do have municipal water in Ballymote. We do have a supply from the, actually, I think that's misstated in here. It's actually the City of London system. We have private septic systems, and we have some storm sewers. And in Ballymote, we do have a limited amount of growth. So in Ballymote, there really are no existing issues. And with limited growth, we're not recommending any changes to the servicing for Ballymote. For Burr, we have a municipal water system which is serviced by municipal well. It services a small portion of Burr. The remainder is serviced by private wells. We also have private septic systems and some storm sewers in the hamlet. There's also some limited growth in the hamlet, but again, no existing issues in Burr, and we're not recommending any changes. In Bryanston, we also have water and sanitary, both by private systems. There's very, very limited services in Bryanston. Also, no growth planned, no real issues or no recommendations to change the servicing schemes. And so no recommended changes there. I'm just going to pause for a second. Just going to change out presentations, and I'll start again in a second. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. We'll technical glitch there. So moving on to Denfield. There we also have a connection to the Lake Huron water supply system. We have some infrastructure in terms of water treatment and distribution in an in-ground tank and a booster pumping station. Again, we have private septic systems, very similar obviously to most of your hamlets, some limited storm sewer system. Again, limited growth in this community, and we're not recommending any changes to the servicing for Denfield. For Logo, again, minimal municipal services here, and the Logo is obviously a very small hamlet. We've got private wells, private septic system, very, very limited growth, no recommendations for changes in Logo. Melrose. So I have a little bit of activity here in Melrose. So Melrose is currently serviced by private wells and a limited municipal distribution system, and then distribution system to some of Melrose. There is a project ongoing right now. Actually, Stantec is working for the municipality connecting that system to the Lake Huron water supply system. So that would bring Lake Huron water to the existing distribution system. There is some provision for expansion of that, so that could service the rest of Melrose. But that project is underway in terms of making that change. We do have sanitary servicing, again, by private septic systems, some storm sewers, again, very limited growth. And with the change of the water system, no further recommended changes to Melrose. Poplar Hill Cold Stream. So we have a little bit of growth actually happening here in Poplar Hill Cold Stream. Again, we have private wells and private septic systems. Notwithstanding the fact that there is some growth, there's really no good opportunity to provide municipal services to Poplar Hill, nor would it be cost effective. So similar to the previous hamlets, again, no recommended changes. Okay, now we'll get into something a little bit more meaty. I wanted to kind of go through some of those other hamlets just to give you a lay of the land and just to recognize that they were all looked at and considered. Let's get into Arva. So Arva has obviously a little bit more going on. So let's talk about the existing situation there. So we have water by connection to the City of London. So municipal water is supplied by through a connection to the City of London. We also have sanitary servicing for most of Arva, not all of Arva. There's some private septic systems, but most of Arva is serviced to a sanitary pumping station, which in turn discharges into the City of London sewer system and is treated in the City of London. There's some storm sewers. We do have a fair bit of growth here happening in Arva, obviously out at the west end of Medway Drive. So what are we recommending for Arva? First thing here is I'm going to note is that the listing that you're seeing here is the projects that we're recommending out of this master plan. There's one conspicuous absence is that there's no sewage treatment plant on this list. So I do want to explain that we did look at extensively the servicing situation for Arva and whether we felt that it was worth recommending something other than your current system. So your current system, as I said, comes to you to the sanitary pumping station, pumps into the City of London system. You have two parameters in terms of your agreement with the City of London. One is that you have a maximum cap of flow that you can send into the City of London system. And the second is, well, you had an annual cap as well. Obviously, the municipality was successful in negotiating away that annual cap. So the only limitation you really have right now is a maximum flow you can send into the City of London system. That maximum is not enough for all of the growth in Arva, but it will allow some growth to occur. So our recommendation is to continue sending flows to the City of London. That will last you for some growth in Arva, and that over time you renegotiate that agreement with the City of London. That agreement may come with some costs, and it was outside of our scope to sort of look at what impacts that would have to the City of London system. But we are aware that the city has allowed for a significant amount of growth in Arva. It may trigger some downstream improvements and some treatment plant improvements in the City of London. So it's not to say that there's no cost to that, but it is still your best option. Any other option carried a significant upfront cost to service Arva. So our recommendation is to stay with the City of London system and renegotiate that cap as you start to reach that maximum. In terms of other projects here in Arva, really this is all growth oriented, and you're going to see that on a lot of our projects. In terms of the sanitary sewer system, we are recommending a new sanitary pumping station here at the west end of Medway Road. You're going to see a cost. You're going to see costs up here for all of these projects. All of these projects you're going to see are really dependent on this development out, this yellow area proceeding. And so that sanitary pumping station would be constructed on development property. It would have a force main which would connect it back to the existing sanitary pumping station, and then again going into the City of London system from there. Over time, this station will also need an upgrade. This does not have the capacity for future growth, so that will also require an upgrade in time. So that's your sanitary sewer system. In terms of the water system, as I mentioned earlier, you're currently connected to the City of London for water, and so you're paying the City of London for water. We are recommending that you change that connection. So we are recommending that you construct a new water main down Medway Road. You just have to construct it down here to the Arbor Reservoir, so you're about a little less than 2 kilometers down the road, and connect directly to the Lake Huron system. The interesting thing here is that you're currently receiving Lake Huron water. You're receiving it through the City of London. And the rates at which you're paying the City of London versus what you would pay if you were getting the water directly, there is a differential there. The differential, if you look at it over time, particularly when you look at growth occurring in Arva, the rate will the difference in rates or your cost savings will essentially pay for this water main over time. So our recommendation is to proceed with this project. Our recommendation would be to do that coincident with the development. So that gives you the opportunity to bring the water main in here. We are also recommending a water storage and water booster station in about the same location as the pumping station. And then through development, looping that water main back into the existing Arva system, and then you would decommission the line to the City of London. I mentioned also a booster station and water storage. So right now, Arva is one of the few communities that has a municipal water system but doesn't have any storage. That's a little bit of an issue right now because you have a singular water main connection into the City of London. If you have some sort of an interruption of service, if there was a break in the water main or something like that, there's no redundancy in your system. So Arva would be without water for a period of time. Putting storage into the system gives you some redundancy. It buys you some time that if there was a water main break or something of an emergency nature, you can draw off the stored water. So even though this change would still have you as a single feed into the Lake Huron system, the addition of storage buys you that emergency storage and that redundancy. I'm just going to note here as we're going on, I have summed all of the costs that we've shown here. So you'll see some costs represented. You'll see in some cases these are developer costs because these are really strictly developer-oriented projects. We have summed them by community. But I've also given, at this level, these are preliminary costs. So at this level where we usually peg these costs is with some variability, we'll say that this is, roughly plus 30% or minus 20%. There are also project costs. So we have estimated in costs for design efforts, for consulting efforts to implement projects. I guess the last one I'll mention here, and I won't spend a lot of time talking about stormwater on each of these, but for all of generally the growth areas or where there are deficiencies in the stormwater system, we will have some recommendations as far as stormwater. This one particularly for Arva speaks specifically about stormwater and stormwater collection management for the growth lands. And the measures that we generally recommend, I call it like a menu of stormwater management. So these slides really just speak at a very high level to providing stormwater for the growth. The plan itself will speak in a little bit more detail. We'll talk about things like infiltrative measures. We'll talk about wet ponds or dry ponds or those sorts of things. But at this level, I'm just just mentioning that stormwater management is obviously planned for in these growth areas. And generally, what you're going to see in most of the stormwater projects is that they are developer costs. The municipality doesn't have a DC charge specific to stormwater, and generally these projects are focused specifically on individual developments. Okay, I'm going to move on to depth. So we currently have a water supplied, it's by the Lake Huron water supply system, but it runs through Kamoka. So Lake Huron comes to Kamoka. Kamoka then passes that water on to Delaware and to Kilworth. We also have a water storage facility on Longwoods Road as well as a booster station. We do not have any sanitary servicing. Everybody knows that one. It's all about private septic systems, and we have some stormwater, some storm sewers in place for the community. We do have a significant amount of growth here planned from Delaware particularly in the employment lands, which I know is something that was identified as something important to the municipality. So with that in mind, how are we going to service all of this? So the first thing that obviously we're looking at here is how do we service it in terms of wastewater treatment? So I mentioned this in my example at the start, looking at various alternatives. Our recommended alternative is to send flows to the Komoka wastewater treatment plant. That does trigger, and you'll see this on future slides, that does trigger upgrades to the Komoka plant, but it is still your best option in terms of how to treat flows coming from Delaware. How do we get flows there? Well, we've recommended a couple of pumping stations. So you're going to see a red dot here. This is pumping station number 1. So we've located this basically in the middle of your employment lands. And I worked both in terms of priorities and phasing and topography to locate it there. And then you would have a network of sanitary sewers that would emanate out from that pumping station. The flows would be collected at that pumping station and then sent by force main. So these flows would be then pumped up to Longwoods Road, across Longwoods, up Carriage and Gideon, and up to the Komoka plant. So that's how the flows would get there. This pumping station would generally service most of the growth area for Delaware, or I could, other way I guess looking at it, it would service generally the table lands in Delaware. So anything Victoria Street easterly would, by extension of sewer systems out from this pumping station would service most of this area of Delaware. And then we have another pumping station in the lower lands in Delaware. We've located this on the municipal property, so in the vicinity of the old municipal office of the Ball Diamond. So it's land already owned by the municipality. And this would be a second pumping station, which would generally service the existing areas of Delaware. So anything from Victoria Street down the hill westerly. So you really got sort of two halves of Delaware. Obviously, the more imminent project, as we understood with the employment lands, is this pumping station here. This is pumping station number 1. Cost here is the pumping station and the force main to get you to the Komoka plant. Second number on the list, which is a pretty scary number, is if you chose to service the existing area of Delaware. So that number is a consolidation of the pumping station that I mentioned here. We call this pumping station number 2, a force main to get those flows up into the system, which in turn goes to pumping station number 1 and works its way to Komoka, as well as sanitary sewers for all of the existing areas of Delaware, including Victoria Street westerly. So very large number here, but we are talking about servicing almost all of Delaware in that number. And you'll see here that, in terms of timing of that project, whereas, we know other projects with a year or depending on development, we've indicated this at the discretion of the municipality. There is, to our understanding, there is no compelling pressure to say that the municipality has to implement this project. What we are basically saying in this plan is, this is how you could implement this project. This is how you could service these lands. It is up to council whether you choose to do that, whether that's now or at any point in the time frame of the master plan. So we're just giving you the tools, but we're not recommending that you proceed with that project. It is at your discretion. A few other projects here on this list. We're going to talk a little bit about water. So with growth in the municipality, you are going to need additional booster pumping, and you're going to need additional storage. We have recommended that facility be located also in the employment lands adjacent to the sanitary pumping station. And we're also indicating that really is dependent on development. These are not existing issues, but as you develop, especially as you develop your employment lands, you are going to need additional booster pumping and additional storage. Got a recommendation here in terms of stormwater management. You'll see a bunch of green facilities here in terms of where some of the stormwater facilities are located in Delaware. Again, I won't spend too much time speaking about that. Oh, and sorry, I missed this one here. We also have an upgrade to an existing water main. So this is your connection to Kamoka. Under existing conditions, you're well serviced by this water main, but as the community grows, the water main is too small. It's too small of a diameter to service your growth. So you are going to have to upsize this water main essentially from the intersection of Gideon and Kamoka Road through to the edge of the community. So that will be a project that, as growth is occurring, so we say dependent on development, so as you see growth occurring, you're going to have to trigger that project. Okay, and move on to Ellerton. So again, existing conditions here in Ellerton, we have water supply by the Lake Huron water supply system. We do have sanitary servicing pretty much throughout the settlement area of Ellerton. We have 4 pumping stations in Ellerton, which is certainly a lot for a small community like this, and of course a wastewater treatment plant, which services the community, and we have some storm sewers. We do have some growth here, both occurring and ongoing, as well as growth in the south end of Ellerton. So projects for Ellerton. So the one thing that you're going to come up against in the not too distant future is the need to upgrade the Ellerton wastewater treatment plant. Based on those linear growth projections I talked about earlier, we're saying that you're going to essentially hit the trigger in about 2028. So that is essentially when you're going to want that project implemented. Obviously, you'll be wanting to plan for that project earlier than 2028, but that's essentially when you're going to see that project become necessary based on the growth forecast in Ellerton. And you're looking at approximately $9 million for that project. One of the things that we looked at here is because you have so many pumping stations in Ellerton, we looked at opportunities to consolidate pumping stations and take some of them offline. They are a burden to the municipality in terms of operation and maintenance costs, as well as there's a risk factor obviously associated with any pumping station. There was limited ability to do that, but we have recommended that pumping station number 3, so this is one that is located on High Park Road, sort of in the middle of the community. We have recommended a project which will take that one offline. It would involve some extension of sewers downstream. There's an easement required through some private properties here and some upgrades of some of the sewers in the existing subdivision. So there's you can see from these red lines, there is a fair bit of work to upgrade those sewers to receive the flows from pumping station number 3. But we still are recommending that project because if you balance that off against the liability of the pumping station and the ongoing operation and maintenance cost, it's our opinion that it's still worth doing the project. Having said that, this falls in that category of at the discretion of the municipality. Obviously, you have to prioritize your projects and your money, and so this one, there isn't a immediate need for this project. There isn't a timed need for this project. It really is at the discretion of the municipality so that you can save on those operation and maintenance costs over time. I'm going to pass over that one. We do have a couple of water projects here. We are going to have to upgrade the existing water booster station. Again, based on growth, this is a smaller project. It just involves changing out some pumps at your existing station. Bigger one here is water storage. So with the growth that you're seeing in Ellerton, you are going to need additional water storage in time. For us, again, based on those linear growth forecasts, we're estimating that at approximately 2030. It's a little bit of a larger dollar figure at about $7 million. We're actually recommending a new site for that. So right now you have an existing water tower out at the north end of Ellerton. We're recommending that this additional water storage be located at the south end of Ellerton. It gives you a little bit of redundancy because there is only a singular water main going to that water storage facility at the north end. So I talked about redundancy with all of that. This gives you a little bit of redundancy in that if there was ever an issue at this storage facility, this is, it's essentially a backup, so to speak. This is necessary for growth, But in terms of if one tower went down, you don't have towers on the same site feeding through the same water mains. And then, of course, we've got some stormwater management here recommended mostly for the southern lands because these are yet undeveloped, and some stormwater facilities to treat stormwater, again, depending on development and how it proceeds, and it would be a development cost. Okay, let's move on to Kilworth. So Kilworth, similar to Delaware, we have water coming from the Lake Huron system through Kamoka, passed on to Kilworth. We'll touch on that a little bit more detail as we get to Kamoka. The majority of the community is serviced by 2 pumping stations. We have 1 small pumping station which services a small area of Kilworth, sort of down in this corner. We have Old Kilworth, which is still on septic and wells. And then we have a larger station that was built about 2016 that services the vast majority of Kilworth. That pumping station goes over to the Kamoka wastewater treatment plant, where it's where the wastewater is treated. We do have some significant ongoing growth that has already been planned for, and capacity has been allocated. We have some new growth that we're looking at on the north side of Glendon Drive that we need to have regard for. And in terms of projects for Kilworth, we did show a couple of projects here in terms of servicing what we refer to as Old Kilworth. So this is very similar to what I said about Delaware and servicing existing Delaware. We gave you a plan for how you could service the Old Kilworth area. So those areas that are on septic and wells, that this is how it could be serviced. So essentially it would come to the existing Blackwind pumping station. This station would have to be upgraded and then flow sent by first main into your gravity sewer system. That in turn goes down to your existing Kilworth pumping station, then of course to the Kamoka wastewater treatment plant. And then of course from that pumping station, you would have sewers, local sewers, which would emanate out into the Old Kilworth area. Obviously that is a significant cost. So again, similar to Delaware, we're leaving that at the discretion of the municipality as to when and if you wish to implement that project. Also, we looked at your distribution system for Old Kilworth and gave you a template for how you could service it by distribution system. It really is just an extension of your existing system, but it is a significant amount of water mains that would have to be constructed in that neighborhood, and a fairly significant cost obviously associated with that. The last one in this sort of list of 3 that relates to Old Kamoka is a stormwater issue. So one of the things that was identified through the course of the master plan is that there is a drainage issue that is imminent in Old Kilworth. They're having some issues of water ponding. So what we're recommending is a relatively inexpensive fix, which we call bioswales. Better way of saying it is it's infiltrative measures. So rather than constructing a more significant system of storm sewers and treatment, we're really just recommending enhancing the roadside ditch system and implementing these bioswales or these infiltrative measures, which should basically take the water and put it back into the ground. We obviously have very, very good soils in terms of infiltrating in that neighborhood. So I want to take advantage of that. We have a planned upgrade here for approximately 2040. So we're a good ways out now with this one for the Kilworth sanitary pumping station. The pumping station was constructed, as I said, in approximately 2016, and it was designed with the idea that it would be expanded at a later date. So we're saying that's probably about, based on forecasts, about 2040. This last piece here is that I mentioned is a water main connection. So one of the issues that I know the municipality is well aware of already and has some plans in place to address is the fact that there's only a single water main feed into Kilworth on Glendon Drive. So that obviously, as I mentioned about redundancy earlier, you don't have any storage in Kilworth. So if there was an interruption of that water main, that would be an issue for the residents of Kilworth. What we're recommending here is a second water main. We're recommending you look for opportunities to try to do that through new development on the north side of Glendon Drive. We're aware that the municipality had planned to twin the main on Glendon, which is also a valid option. So the plan here would be to create a second feed into Kilworth to create that redundancy. Okay, let's move on to Komoka. There's a lot going on in Komoka. This is my last settlement area to speak of. So Komoka, obviously, as mentioned earlier, you're getting water from Lake Huron system. You're servicing Komoka, but you're also, as I mentioned earlier, you're sending water out to Kilworth and you're sending water out to Delaware as well. So this becomes a bit of a hub. You have several different facilities in terms of water. You have an elevated tower. You have on-grade storage in the community center. You have a booster station. We also have an intermediate booster station on Railway Ave. You have sanitary servicing pretty much throughout, service to the wastewater treatment plant. You have some storm sewers, and you do have a significant amount of growth also planned for Komoka. So projects for Komoka. So what you're seeing here is the first three projects are all relating to the Komoka wastewater treatment plant. And with the growth forecast that we have, and keeping in mind that, as I mentioned in previous slides, you've got planned growth in Delaware, which is going to come to Komoka. You have growth in Kilworth that's going to Komoka, and you have growth in Komoka itself. So you've got quite a lot of pressure on the Komoka wastewater treatment plant. And over the course of years, you're going to need to plan for 3 upgrades of that plant. It was designed in such a way to be upgraded. So there's sort of modules, so to speak, that can be added to that plant. And based on forecasts, you're looking at roughly every 5 years. The first upgrade is probably going to kick in somewhere in about 2028. And then every 5 years after that, you're going to need to continue to expand that plant. I want to speak a little bit about this one as well. As I mentioned at the very start that when we were doing this master plan study, we wanted to do part of the study work under the Class EA so that you could then proceed to design and construction. This is the only project that's an exception to that, in that because it's a sewage treatment plant, it does require a little higher level of study. So I'm going to touch on this one at the end, but there is some additional work that will need to be done. The master plan itself basically gets you through a couple of stages of that study work. But in order to then move on to going to a design and construction assignment or a design and construction project, sorry, for Komoka, there's a little bit more study work that will need to be done to satisfy the Class EA for just that one project. Other projects here that we've recommended. We've recommended a new sanitary pumping station. So this is out in your growth lands out here on the east end of Glendon Drive. So approximately in this location in the growth lands. This would essentially service your growth lands initially. You can see how we've sort of sketched in the sanitary sewers. It also provides a potential connection to the existing Komoka sanitary pumping station. So you have an existing sanitary pumping station here on Komoka Road. That station is fine for now, but it probably will, over the course of time, require an upgrade. And obviously, we're very conscious of we don't want to introduce too many pumping stations in any one community. So you do have an opportunity. The municipality does have some land that sort of extends out the back of this pumping station. So you do have an opportunity, as this station is built on Glendon Drive and sewers are extended through the growth lands, you have an opportunity to then extend that sewer further to the site of the existing Komoka pumping station and decommission that station. So essentially, with that decommissioning, then all of your flows for Komoka would essentially come to that new pumping station. That new pumping station would then, by first main, send flows directly to the Komoka wastewater treatment plant. So let's talk about water here for a moment. That really summarizes the gist of the sanitary. In terms of water, there's a few projects here, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background as to sort of where we are with the water system. So many of you are probably aware that water used to come from Kilworth. So you had a treatment facility, or you had wells in Kilworth. water was sent from Kilworth to Kamoka. So the system was essentially built that way. And a lot of the infrastructure was built that way. When we changed the system and we connected to the Lake Huron system, and we essentially had Lake Huron water coming to Kamoka, and we're now doing it in the reverse. We're sending water from Kamoka to Kilworth. That system worked, but it wasn't designed that way. We're starting to get to a point where now that system is stressed with growth, and we're starting to see that it's not going to work in future. So what you're going to see here in the plan is the several projects that essentially speak to how do we get water from Kamoka to Kilworth. And again, it's working right now, but as you get more growth in Kilworth, it's stressing that system. So you see a number of projects here. The first couple of projects is your existing booster station needs to be upgraded. That's approximately 2026. So that's a bit more of an immediate project, but a smaller dollar figure. And you also have an intermediate booster station. This is on Railway Ave. So this is right about here. Your existing, the other booster station is up here in the community center. Both of those are nearer term projects in terms of boosting the pressure and boosting what we're sending to, particularly to Kilworth, but you're also obviously seeing growth pressure in Kamoka. Kamoka, of course, is a bit of a busy area, so I have a second slide for Kamoka. You see a couple of projects here in 2033. So 2033 is where water storage starts to become a bit more of an issue for you. And there's two projects listed here, but both in about the same time frame. A little bit bigger dollars here in terms of we're recommending expansion of your on-ground storage. So you have some on-ground storage facilities in the community center. That's about $3 million. We're also recommending that you replace your existing elevated tower. So this comes back to the fact that the system wasn't designed for the way it's operating right now. And what we found through the modeling exercise was, unfortunately, the tower isn't tall enough. It isn't providing enough pressure to the system. You're already actually seeing this. There's some water pressure issues on Jeffries in Kilworth, where the water pressures are a little on the low side, and that's really what's happening there. So essentially, our recommendation is to demolish the existing elevated tower. You still want elevated storage, but it would be a new tower at a higher elevation, so that boosts the pressure up so you can push it through to Kilworth. Again, we're looking at 2033 for those two projects. In 2036, so there's sort of a suite of projects, but they're really all addressing the same issues. They're just kicking in at different times as growth occurs. So in 2036, you're seeing a water main upgrade here. This is essentially down Queen Street, so bringing water from these storage facilities down Queens Ave and across Railway. So the existing water main is just a little undersized, so this would be replacing and upgrading the size of that water main. And then, of course, a suite of various stormwater projects to service various stormwater needs, generally development-based in the community. So all of these really depend on the development and as a developer cost. The only one here that we have represented a cost for, and is really a nearer term project that I know council is already planning for, is a stormwater facility here on the west side of Kamoka. So this one is receiving both flows from development as well as flows from the existing areas of Kamoka. So there will obviously be some cost sharing between the municipality and development for that project. That project was actually studied in some of the previous stormwater master plan work that we've done for the municipality, and a lot of so those recommendations are basically being carried forward into this plan. So that one had already been studied and recommended, and there's some movement to implement that project. Just mindful of my time here. Solid waste, not a lot to speak to on solid waste, but obviously we did look at your existing solid waste system. One of the big changes that you have coming here is what they refer to as extended producer responsibility system. So essentially, the regulations that are causing those producers of packaging and waste and all that sort of thing to have to manage the costs of that. So that's a change that you're going to see in the system, and I know you're very well aware of. Obviously, there's some opportunities to divert more waste, both in terms of organic collection as well as recycling. Really, in terms of recommendations, you're well served by BRA. There's no recommendations to change that. It's still the best course of action. But there will be opportunities upcoming. We expect for organic matter collection and a little bit more diversion to composting and anaerobic digestion. Okay, so that was a lot to digest. I just wanted to summarize a couple of things here. Some of the things that we found through the course of the master plan. So one of the things I want to be clear about here is that your existing system is in really good shape in terms of its existing needs. So a lot of what you're seeing me talk about here tonight is growth pressures, and you have significant amount of growth. So that is causing pressures in terms of upgrades, but your existing system is in very good shape in terms of its capacity. Yeah, you have a significant amount of growth occurring. We've got approximately 15,000 people in terms of growth in residential and about 5,000 jobs as we project out to 2046. So that's a significant growth pressure over that time frame. Just revisiting the fact that our costs, when you add it all together, it's a very large number. But I'm just gonna put it back to say this is a plan out to 2046. So you've got lots of time. And obviously, as we talked about earlier, you do have some opportunities to service some of those areas that are unserviced, both in Delaware and Kilworth. Again, at the discretion of the municipality as to whether you pursue with those, but there are opportunities to provide servicing to those areas. And then in terms of next steps, we've essentially gone through all of the study work to identify all these projects. We are going to issue what I'll call an interim master plan report. So it'll actually be a report that the council can review. And with that interim report, the intention is then to feed into your development charge studies. So we're aware that you've got development charge studies that we're looking to kick off early in the new year. What our intention here is to give you that list of projects and costings so that you can then embark on those development charges. We do have a little bit more study work to do in terms of satisfying those Class EA requirements. So we have to do a little bit more inventory work with looking at natural environment issues and other issues just to satisfy those class environmental assessment matters. I want to emphasize that is not with the idea that any of these projects or the costs will change. Generally, what we're looking at when we're doing those studies is looking at mitigation measures. So, as we're constructing those works, what processes do we have to go through? What mitigation do we have to go through to protect the environment? Once that work is complete, then a final version of the master plan will come back to council. So there'll be some time period between this presentation when you see the initial interim report, and you'll see the final report, which will have all of that inventory work. But that would be the final master plan, which will obviously come back for council approval. I mentioned earlier about additional study work for the commercial wastewater treatment plant. So again, we've done some of that study work in the master plan, but there will be some additional need for additional study work to satisfy the Class EA requirements just for that project. Everything else that I've mentioned in this list, essentially what has been done in the master plan or what will be done in the master plan will satisfy the Class EA requirements for every other project except for the commercial plant. And of course, all of those other projects can then proceed to design and construction. Okay, so that was a lot to digest. And I apologize for going a little long, but thank you for your attention. And I'm open for questions and comments and concerns.
There is a lot to digest. Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions. I have Councillor Heffernan and then Councillor Bruce.
So it's going to cost a lot of money, all of these to be done, and I'm really concerned about that. I realize that there's a reason, but nevertheless, even the ones within 5 years, like I don't know how we're going to pay for that. I mean, I'm sure taking over working numbers for days and weeks and months, but and it's all in the water and wastewater and stormwater rate. So it's, what is it, about 6,000 people or so, more or less, 6,000 households. There's a lot to consider. Other thing that I wanted to comment on was the current Anderson wastewater distribution, the plant there, doesn't have the capacity to be increased. And I guess where I'm going with this is, should growth be paused until some of this stuff can get underway? But I'm just worried about the Oxbow Creek. Does it have the capacity for the increase on that wastewater plant?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. So obviously our study looked at, in terms of, so let me address the first part in terms of costs. Our study obviously looked at identifying projects and identifying costs. Obviously we turned it over to council and staff to determine how to pay for it. But I will say that a lot of what you heard me talk about today are projects that are caused by development and caused by growth. So what you're going into next in terms of your development charge studies would be looking at how do you assess the growth portion of those projects to grow through your development charges. So that's one of your mechanisms to pay for those projects. So the other question in terms of the wastewater treatment plant, yes, there is both footprint capacity. So we actually, through the course of the master plan, we actually looked at what does the existing plant look like, and what is the footprint of the property that you have there, and can it be expanded? And the answer is yes. The other thing that we looked at is what is we refer to as the assimilated capacity of Oxbow Creek. So what is it essentially rated for? There was vision for this. This is Ilderson has really always been considered for the expansion that we're talking about today. So this to some degree wasn't really new information that we uncovered through the master plan. It was really just confirming the magnitude of an expansion that has always been considered. And some of the previous study work and consultations with the Ministry of the Environment had already looked at what is the capacity of Oxbow Creek to receive this amount of flow. So what we were able to say was the expansion that you need for your growth up to 2046 is within what had been previously studied as far as capacity in Oxbow Creek. So the answer is yes, that there is capacity.
Thank you, through your worship. So I asked you this question before. Why is it called employment lands in 1.5? I always thought that there must be residential zone to what? Miller Road's going to be extended across. Is that the break point? And then all this is what, industrial commercial in the lower part? Is that why that terminology is put on this? South of Longwoods, Jeff? All of that. Why is it called employment lands?
So I think my first answer is I'll defer to planners on that one because he would like to use those two, but I'll give my answer is that you're correct in that some of the growth areas in Delaware are residential areas. That generally most of the zoning and most of the designations south of Longwoods is some form of what we generally refer to as employment. So that would be commercial, institutional, industrial, anything that essentially employs someone.
So we have two choices in Delaware: do the new section or do the whole town, some sort of combination of that. So is that correct?
So essentially what we looked at a couple of options. So generally when we did the study, we looked at the topography of Delaware, and those two pumping stations that I talked about earlier, that is really your best way of servicing Delaware. So you've got one that's sort of, like I said, the lower lands, and you've got the one in the employment lands. That's the best way of servicing it. We looked at two different options in terms of, obviously we want to minimize infrastructure. So one pumping station goes to the other pumping station, and then that pumping station goes to the commercial wastewater treatment plant. Knowing that the priority for the municipality, or at least our understanding was that the municipality's priority was the employment lands and that servicing the existing Delaware wasn't as high a priority, we phased it so that the pumping station, the employment lands would be the initial pumping station that you would build, And the pumping station number 2, the one that services the existing Delaware, pumps to number 1. So you could do it either way, and we did look at either way. But understanding the priorities of the municipality, it seemed apparent to us that the priority was the employment lands. So our recommended plan would be construct pumping station number 1, force main out to Kamoka, and then at a later date, construct pumping station number 2 and pump from pumping station number 2 to pumping station number 1.
Okay, so I know this is a lot of money. Everybody's worried about it, so this is a high level plan, so it goes up to 2046, so it's gonna be up to us to get more details. And how is this, what are the priorities and how is it chunked out? So we shouldn't get too worried tonight.
All right.
I don't want to break you too much, but yes, yeah. So the emphasis here on this is a 23, 24, 22, 23 year forecast outwards. And as you can see from these projects, some of them based on development, some of them based on timing. So the idea is that obviously you meter projects out over time.
Councilor Ertz next.
Through the Madam Manager, when you do these stormwater management plans, it's always been my pet peeve because 100-year storm event, what's that, 75, 100 mils in a 24-hour period? And I'm a farmer, so we keep track of that. Every year somewhere it gets 100 millimeters in and out. Like, it's not climate change, it's a stalled weather system or one that just keeps sliding through a certain area. The first 25 mils will go underground. The next 25 mils, I highly doubt it. So there's 50 mils, it's going over land, it's not even thinking about it. I don't care what soil you have, what type of infiltration. So I would appreciate when we design these subdivisions that you factor in that this excess rain is going to run down the road and not through someone's yard, or it's reality. Like I said, 100-year storm event. I think that's just, yeah, well, I can't say that word. Thank you.
Yeah, I very much agree with you there. Is that it's interesting as engineers, we talk about these 1 in 50-year storms or 1 in 100-year storms, and it's like, well, we had a 1 in 5-year storm last year, and we had another 1 in 50-year storm this year. So, I guess the best I can say is that stormwater is evolving. Certainly, the standards are getting better in terms of what we're planning for in terms of design storms. A lot of areas, a lot of conservation authorities talk about 250-year storms sometimes now, and we're trying to be, I think as a engineering design community, more conscious of the exact things that you're talking about. Is what happens if you exceed those storage amounts of those facilities? What happens if it overflows? Where does it go? What's the overland flow route? Is it designed appropriately to convey those flows? So, I guess best I can say is it's an evolving science, or sometimes a bit of an art, but we're certainly trying to evolve those standards.
We project these costs at 2023 prices. 23 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, these costs aren't even going to be close now. Like, they're going to be escalated pretty badly. So if we're shocked tonight by the numbers, in 10 years, hold on.
I'll answer with a statement that yes, you are correct. The numbers are all based on 2023 construction costs, and I mean, there's a reason why I talked about sort of the plus and minus aspect of it, because obviously things will escalate in time. And one of the things that we've been seeing in the construction industry lately is that it's been outpacing inflation. We have been seeing significant cost escalations on some projects with some municipalities. So yes, you're right. You're right to be cautious and concerned in terms of where this could go in future. Yes.
Councilor Shipley.
You feel better, Paul. You're going for one. You're talking about one in a water tower in Is this for liability, legal reasons, or what would be the main reason for this?
It's a combination of things. It does provide you, I talked earlier about the redundancy aspect, so that it, you have, unplanned, water main breaks or things like that, that you've got storage to supply your community. It also helps in terms of fire flows. If you had a significant fire in any of those communities, oftentimes the supply system into the community isn't sized, large enough to fight some large fires. And it is generally guidelines that the Ministry of the Environment recommends. Is they do have some guidelines in terms of recommendations for water storage. So it's really all of those things.
Well, if there's no one else, I just had a couple simple questions, I think. When you were talking about Delaware and the downhill part, the old part, and you used the word a compelling reason. So I'm just trying to get an idea of compelling. It would be something like X years, that's how long your water mains might last. If there's a catastrophic failure, that might be remove and replace or fix is the question at that point. That would be compelling. Or I'm trying to get, this was the 40.8 million in Delaware, and it was referring to the older part, and it was a big amount of money. So, well, you need a compelling reason to think about doing that. I thought, yeah, how compelling or what kind of compelling? Well, because we have reserves, and if we put money away for things too, then there's sometimes a chunk. But if we know that it's primarily related to aging, then we also know that we have a different timeline for the accruals of reserves and so forth. So I just thought I'd ask for a little clarity.
Yeah, I mean, for us, generally what we see with things like that is where you have failing septic systems. So to our understanding, you don't have that in Delaware right now, but if in future, so if I use that nebulous sort of compelling reasons, probably the most compelling is if you had a widespread failure of septic systems in portions or all of Delaware, then that might be something where you might feel compelled to do so. Obviously, there are other circumstances where maybe the residents themselves said, "Hey, I don't wish to maintain a septic system," and they banded together and chose to compel council to do those projects. But usually it's failing systems that cause projects like that to occur.
Great. I remember replacing my septic now that you mention it. Okay. And the other question I had was, I know, Kamoko Waste Plant, the extra work that needs to be done as a part of this, like a study work, is that for each of the 3 stages, or do you do that once and it's used as a guideline for part A, part B, and subsequent pieces?
Actually, that's a really good question. So we would study all 3. So essentially, maybe just to give you a little bit broader answer to that. So it is under the Class EA, it's something we call a Schedule C project. So it's a very higher level project, is the Kamoko Wastewater Treatment Plant expansion. Through the master plan, we will have done, like I said, a couple of the first steps of that Schedule C assignment, or that Schedule C project. The last part that we won't have done as part of the master plan, but you will need to do to satisfy it as a Schedule C project, is a concept design of that plant. And yes, you would want to. Our recommendation would be look at all 3 phases out to 2046, and then implement it in phases as you go. So you essentially covered off your EA requirements, and then you build it in stages as you need.
I see your hand, Rob.
Sorry, if I could just add, so they'll be very similar to how the last EA with Illigen was handled, right? So there's 2 phases, so.
Okay, I just want to be clear, because I think then we have a plan. We know we can again think about how do we budget and stream monies and so forth. So I just want to be clear. Okay. We have an additional question. Go ahead, Councillor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, after your few questions, I think I have one for Eric, actually. It's like, to expand that Kamoka plant, don't we have to have our neighbor give up some land to make that bigger?
Through you, Mayor, there is land inside the fence line, right beside the existing facility that allows for
a layout of new facilities. It's already been accounted for.
Okay, on that note, then, I just want to say thank you very much. A lot of work has gone on. It's illuminating, whether it gives joy or not. That is another question. But certainly required to see what we have to do as we move forward. And I appreciate your time and patience with questions and explaining everything in layman's terms. So thank you kindly, Paul. Jeff, Mr. Paul, and we'll see you, I guess, when we get future versions and final copies. Okay. Okay, now, we do have another presentation. Anna Moore is here from IBI. And now we can move to the second part of our deck here tonight.
5 minutes.
Oh, 5-minute break? Okay. We'll just let you get set up, 5 minutes, and then we'll be back, okay? I have a thumbs up, so we are live and everything's looking fine. So I'm going to ask that we move ahead. Ms. Maury is going to be presenting the report on the Transportation Master Plan. And again, questions at the end is your preference? Okay, so we'll hold our questions and floor is yours.
Here we go. All right, thank you. I'm very pleased to present an overview of the Transportation Master Plan tonight. By way of outlining today's presentation, we'll start with providing an overview of the study process. We'll touch on policy and planning alignment of the TMP with other policy and planning initiatives, provide an overview of the strategic framework developed for the study, and we'll present recommended actions, implementation considerations, and next steps. So, an overview of the study process. This is the municipality's first standalone transportation master plan. It's a long-range strategic broad-level plan to guide transportation policies, infrastructure, and services through 2046. Now, it's really helpful to clarify that when we say word transportation, we're referring to the movement of people and goods by all travel modes: car, truck, rail, public transit, cycling, walking, and more. The Transportation Master Plan document itself will have 3 parts: foundation, actions, and then implementation strategy. The study is structured according to the municipal class environmental assessment process for master plans. Phase 1 is understanding the needs and opportunities related to transportation. Phase 2 is developing a transportation network. And phase 3 is summarizing study, presenting master plan report together with action plan and implementation. For each of the phases, sorry, everyone can hear me okay, right? Issues, okay. Each of the phases had customized engagement activities. Round 1, we had public information center and a very successful public opinion survey, which gave us a lot of really valuable input to guide the study, and the stakeholder meeting. Round 2 engagement involved taking our draft network recommendations to the public. There's some feedback on those. And then phase 3 is council presentation and 30-day public review of the TMP documents on approval. And we'll find that the TMP, Transportation Master Plan, TMP for short, is really responsive to the engagement inputs that we've received. In phase 1 engagement, some of the more common themes we heard, there's concern and need to accommodate the growth well in the municipality. Glendon Drive just kept coming up again and again. That was top of mind throughout the study. We heard about safety issues such as speeding, both on municipality roads and county roads. There were safety concerns expressed with pedestrian crossing of county roads, concerns about inadequate separation between vehicles and cyclists at times. There was mixed support for increased sidewalks. Some people really want to see more sidewalks. Others did not want to see sidewalks across the lawns and driveways. About the need for transit services, that would be helpful, especially for traveling to London. And we also presented early in the study to stakeholders the potential for recommending a Highway 402 interchange. We got some initial support from City of London staff on that. Phase 2 engagement, the Public Information Center. We heard general support for the TMP goals that were presented, particularly support for preserving the local small town character. That the municipality is unique and that needs to be reflected. And there was a general positive response to the draft actions that we presented. I've listed some of those, but we'll be getting to the actions shortly in this presentation. I touch on policy and planning alignment. So the municipality's transportation network is really interconnected with the broader transportation network. So while the focus of the TMP is on elements under municipality jurisdiction because of the interconnected nature of transportation networks, and just hearing that some elements of the county network and adjacent networks are so important. We thought it was appropriate to also include some actions toward having some influence on those broader networks. And we did look at policies, plans, initiatives for the province, for Middlesex County, Middlesex Center, of course, and some adjacent municipalities as well. Those are listed here. I'll just highlight a few of those. And there is a review of these policies in the phase 1 report for the study. So first, the municipality's strategic plan. There are 5 strategic priorities. There's transportation. The focus is the priority of sustainable infrastructure and services. The strategic plan specifically notes the objective of improved safety for road users. So we do touch on that. We do have actions toward improved safety in the draft TMP. So the new official plan. So the official plan and the transportation master plan together would serve as a blueprint for transportation priorities and growth management. The transportation master plan would work to implement some of the policies in the official plan. And also we hope to see that some of the recommendations in the transportation master plan would be reflected in the official plan, such as the road classification system that we are recommending. So some of the policies, the official plan policies that the TMP supports are promoting and protecting the predominantly agricultural character and economy of the municipality, maintaining and improving network efficiency, safety, considering bicycle and pedestrian transportation options within and where feasible between settlement areas. There are the new employment lands, and the TMP looks to provide more direct connections to those, and also looks to support the urban areas and village centers. Those are a focus, a priority in the official plan. And also we look to align with county priorities. The county's new official plan and their cycling strategies were 2 key documents that we look to in developing this plan. The TMP aligns with county initiatives and policies such as formalizing a road hierarchy integrated with county roads and provincial highways. The county official plan also speaks to encouraging a high standard of urban design by prioritizing principles such as pedestrianization, facilitating economic development on foreign series highways, looking to support and build on the county cycling network plan. The county's OP also speaks to encouraging greater electric vehicle use. We have an action for that. Okay, I'll outline the strategic framework that was developed for this study. It starts with a vision for transportation, and that vision is that transportation networks and services will provide the connectivity needed to move people and goods within, to, and from our community safely, reliably, and efficiently, while supporting a strong quality of life for Middlesex Center residents, reducing negative environmental impacts, and encouraging municipal fiscal responsibility, or sorry, exercising municipal fiscal responsibility. Breaking that vision down into goals, we have identified 6 goals. We laid these out during phase 1 of the study, and we continue to work with them, just tweak them a little bit. And as we were working to operationalize these goals, we realized that 3 of these are really overarching goals that are cross-cutting and inform all of the TMP recommendations, and those are being sensitive to local character and quality of life, protecting the natural environment, and exercising fiscal responsibility. And then there are also 3 mobility goals, and these lend themselves to mode-specific actions. But those actions are also seen through the lens of the overarching goals as well. The three mobility goals are providing safe and efficient connectivity, promoting healthy local mobility, and supporting local industry. In developing the transportation network, we started with a vision and goals and the needs and opportunities that we heard through phase one and identified analysis as well were organized under those 6 goals. And the responses to those needs and opportunities resulted in 37 actions. And some of those are covered in more detail as focus areas in the study. These actions, they vary in scope from very small ones to more intensive ones. They do involve some new or expanded infrastructure, but they also include updated policies, strategies, guidelines, and decision-making frameworks that can also really impact transportation in the municipality. And we also include some actions to collaborate with, seek partnerships with, and advocate to the county, the provincial and adjacent, the province and adjacent municipalities as well. Okay, now we'll get into the recommended actions. So there are 37 of these. I will try to get through them very quickly. Some of them I will provide a little more information about. Now these are organized under the 3 mobility goals, starting with providing safe and efficient connectivity. These fall under 4 categories: road design and classification, which also includes capacity improvements, road safety actions, passenger transit service actions, and resiliency. Okay, starting with road capacity, we looked at the volumes of traffic on roads on the county network and on municipal roads, and looked to see whether there are roads that reach capacity constraints or concerns up to 2046. And we didn't identify any local municipal roads that would reach that would require widening into the future, but we did see that there were county roads, in particular London Drive, County Road 14. We had also we had heard a number of concerns, operational concerns, safety crossing London Drive, and so on. So, yeah, the first action is just to continue to support and collaborate with Middlesex County on the implementation of London Drive improvements. And we created a nice summary map of what those improvements are. As far as road classification, currently the official plan, the local municipal roads are classified as local roads, and adopting a road classification framework that recognizes that local roads really vary in how they're used. Some have carry more traffic and prioritizing traffic movement on those a bit more, as opposed to other local municipal roads which have lower traffic volumes, and yeah, and the focus is more on local land access. Would be appropriate and would guide decision making for the municipality. So this road classification framework identifies some of the local roads as collector roads, and those are shown in blue on the map. The red roads are the county roads. So one action is adopting this framework, and along with that is implementing upgrades as these roads need reconstruction. It'd be appropriate to upgrade those roads shown in blue as collectors to align them more closely to the collector road standards. Now, we can't prescribe what how the county classifies its roads, but we, in going through this exercise, which in the functional road class framework, it's also important to classify urban and rural roads separately. Yeah, and undergoing this exercise, we were thinking it would be just really great if the county could also update its functional road class to formalize greater recognition of the local municipalities' interest in the county roads in urban areas, because they are such a focus for the community. So that might include increased allowance for lower speeds, increased pedestrian crossings, appropriate urban cycling infrastructure, and so forth. Okay, moving on to passenger transit service actions. So we have a map here showing the passenger transit services currently in operation in Middlesex Center and area. So the actions here are to continue to support and promote Middlesex County Connect transit services. That's really key to providing that transit connectivity. We're aware of their plans to adopt an on-demand transit service coverage for, and that would cover the Middlesex Center municipality fully. We'd also recommend seeking partnerships with London Transit Commission to extend service into Middlesex Center, as well as with Perth and Huron counties. They do have services going through Middlesex Center, but they don't stop in the municipality. And also to develop and maintain an up-to-date one-stop source for transit information in and around Middlesex Center, so that residents could just go to the Middlesex Center website and see what services are available nearby, just to maintain that over time, given the range of service providers. As far as road safety actions, the municipality has a Vision Zero campaign, and absolutely that should be continued to continue to increase the safety in the municipality. Also to continue to collaborate on county road safety improvements. We've heard of concerns about speeding on county roads and settlement areas, and the municipality is working with the county to try to control those speeds. We did an analysis of collisions, 5-year collision data in the municipality. We identified the top 10 collision locations, and we also put forward some mitigating measures to consider as appropriate at those locations. In doing that analysis, we found that a significant proportion, it was 40% or so, of collisions in the municipality involve wildlife. So it'd be good to understand that more and apply some wildlife collision mitigations on selected corridors as appropriate. Now, the aspect of safety is safety at the at-grade crossings in the Tomoka-Kilworth area. We know that when Oxbow Drive improvements related to cycling, which we'll talk about soon, are in place, there will need to be a review of the rail signal warrants, because the gates are currently quite close to the road, and widening will need moving them, and to continue to review at-grade rail signals over time as conditions change, as traffic increases, and so forth. And this is a smaller scope action, but we realized that looking at these at-grade crossings, there are cases where vegetation near the crossings can reduce the sight lines. So just maintaining some clearance of the vegetation at those crossings could be helpful. As far as resiliency, we did a review of the current standards for stormwater for bridges and culverts, and we've recommended some updates to those standards to reflect best practices currently, and in response to increased extreme weather events. Also recommend continuing to apply the road surface conversion policy outlined in the 2023 road needs study. We recommend developing and implementing a strategy for electric vehicle charging stations. Developing and implementing a travel demand management strategy to reduce demand for vehicular road capacity. And that could involve setting some travel mode share targets, a target of a certain percentage of travel by transit, by cycling, and so forth, and monitoring that over time. And carpooling could also be an aspect of that, or recommended to be an aspect of that strategy. Moving on to the next goal, promoting healthy local mobility. So this focuses on improvements to encourage cycling and walking pedestrian activity. For cycling, the county has developed a county cycling strategy, which we consider much interest in this study. Now, the first action though is to note that the province has provided updated design guidelines for selecting cycling infrastructure or route types for different contexts, different vehicular volumes, and so forth. So I would recommend updating the municipality's design guidelines to reflect that. And in looking at the county cycling network through those guidelines, we noted that a few updates to the strategy, to the county cycling network, as it relates to the portions that would be on municipal roads, would be warranted. Oops, sorry, I skipped right to the end there. Let me get back to my spot there. There we are. I wanted this thing. Okay. So one change. This connection here along Oxbow Drive in the county network, that was identified as a shared facility where bicycles would share the road with in the same lane as vehicles. And given the volumes on that road, that should be increased to paved shoulders at minimum. Now this connection is quite key because it is part of the provincial cycling network as well. And it does provide that connection to and from London that isn't really possible at London Drive. There's a narrow bridge there that makes it less safe for cycling and walking across. So that's a really key connection there for the municipality. And other municipal connections that were identified in the county network are the north-south connections on Wonderland and Adelaide. And given the high volumes on those roads, buffered paved shoulders would be most appropriate for those. Part of the cycling strategy would be to continue to support the county as they implement their network, which mostly is taking the form of paved shoulders. We've identified a few priorities for recycling connections for the municipality as it relates to county roads. One priority is just right here, the connection from Ilderton to Oxbow Drive. It would just be wonderful to allow children to go to and from the school more safely, cycling, walking. And that is part of the county cycling network. We'd love to see that advanced and implemented in a safe way along the guidelines. And then also the priority would be just to continue that across Ilderton and down Wonderland to connect to London. And the long-term connection would be that bridge across London Drive into London. Other cycling actions would be to ensure not just safe routes, but also safe crossings where these trails cross roads. And finally, to update the Trails Master Plan, which was developed, it was approved in 2014. A lot has changed since 2014. There's the county cycling network. It's been a lot of growth, and it would be great to see that reflected in a Trails Master Plan update on the scope of the TMP study. As far as encouraging pedestrian activity, we recommend, of course, continuing to follow the province's guidance for implementing pedestrian crossings. So province lays out what circumstances you should have a school crossing or pedestrian crossover of different types, or traffic signals and so forth. In collaboration with the county, we would like to see some current school crossings upgraded to pedestrian crossovers. There were a few locations that seem to be good candidates for pedestrian crossovers, and those include the current crossing in Ilderton across Hyde Park. It's a school crossing. In the future, we'd like to see a safe crossing at the east side of Ilderton. And also in Delaware, this was an area of top concern, and it would be great to see a safer pedestrian crossing at this location or in the area, especially as the employment lands are developed in Delaware. Okay, as far as sidewalks, we have a number of recommendations as well. We've included a prioritization framework to help guide the infilling of sidewalk gaps. And that the factors include road classification, proximity to schools, transit, parks, community facilities, and so forth. And doing the complete inventory of the sidewalks is not in the scope of our study, but we did note that there are some roads that we've identified as collectors that have sidewalk gaps, as shown here in Kamoka, Kilworth. We recommend that there's a requirement that new developments include sidewalks or trails consistent with the road classification framework that we've identified. It's so much easier to have those sidewalks in place at the start rather than to retrofit them afterwards. As far as retrofitting, filling in gaps, we recommend implementing a connected sidewalk network using the prioritization framework that we've put forward. And as those sidewalks are implemented, to also include amenities such as benches and lighting. And finally, it would be good to have some guidance to include alternative sidewalk designs to facilitate sidewalk retrofits. The current design is to have the sidewalks 2 meters away from the road, and that's a harder sell in established neighborhoods. A design that brings the sidewalk close to the road or at the road would be appropriate to help with infilling in some cases. And the third goal, supporting local industries. These actions fall into the categories of supporting goods movement and also ensuring parking supply. As far as goods movement actions, this is the most significant, most intensive action, I believe, and that is to collaborate with the county and the province toward a new Highway 402 interchange. Carriage Road seems to be the most appropriate location for that interchange. Of course, yes, this would involve a collaboration with the county and the province. We did some high-level assessment through our strategic framework to show support for this interchange at this location. Although an environmental study that looks into alternatives in more detail and looks more closely at the environmental impacts of the interchange would be required. And yeah, as I mentioned, City of London staff at our stakeholder meeting thought it would be a great idea because it would reduce the cut through traffic through the Lambeth neighborhood in London. That should be built. The other actions to support this movement include working with partners, CN and AKC Railways to explore the feasibility of a road rail transload station. So that's been talked about for some time. It would be great to just move that forward to a business case and just explore that further. And also to consider farm equipment in the design and maintenance of rural roads. Our phase 2 report lays out some of the challenges that farm equipment faces when moving on the road, some of the regulations and some potential actions to better incorporate or to better reflect farm equipment needs in road design and maintenance. And final action is relates to parking supply. Parking supply in Middlesex Centre is currently not a concern. There is an official plan policy that speaks to ensuring parking supply to support local businesses as they and village centers as growth occurs. And this recommendation also seeks to look at parking supply, not just for the sake of parking, but also looking to where this can dovetail with other objectives, such as electric vehicle charging, supporting carpooling, and also supporting transit services. And may be appropriate to put a transit stop at these parking sites, for example. We've identified one potential location to look at as part of the strategy to ensure parking supply in this valley. Okay, so that's touched on all 37 of our recommended actions. Now to talk about some implementation considerations. Our phase 3 draft report, our TMP summary report, lays out an implementation plan for each of the actions in terms of short-term targets over the next 3 years, and medium-term targets looking out 5 more years to 2031, and finally long-term targets through another 15 years to 2046. So just put some couple of examples there of what those targets would look like for a couple of the actions. And this seems really feasible, implementable. Oh yes, and in this action plan, we've also just laid out really broadly what the cost would be for some of the higher cost items. So broad way like this. And then we also looked at the cost for some of the higher cost items only. A number of the actions could be implemented within the municipalities' operating and capital budgets, or at a low incremental cost to those. So this reflects some of the higher cost items, trying to get a handle of what those would be. And that includes costs like collector road upgrades, cycling upgrades, pedestrian infrastructure, and some of the larger studies like the Trails Master Plan update. There's a lot of cost uncertainty, especially where there's potential partnerships and cost sharing involved. These costs do not include land acquisition costs, and that would only be applicable to the Highway 402 interchange. The collector road upgrades and other cycling upgrades look to do those within the existing rights of way of the municipal roads. So these costs are summarized by phase and by goal. We did not include approximately 25 million costs for Highway 402 interchange, and that number comes from was informed by the recent Wonderland Road interchange, and there'd be some study costs involved as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty as to how those costs would be shared. We just wanted to get that interchange into the plan to show support for that long term. So those costs total 34 million over the study horizon. Some of these costs in the short term, under goal 4, short and medium term, there's a few million there. There are short, medium term that are already committed costs relating to the London Drive improvements. Anyway. And finally, next steps. The next step would be for council to accept or receive the transportation master plan and the supporting documents summarizing phase 1, 2, and consultation. And, yeah, we would publish a notice of study completion. Actually, under the new MCA guidelines, it would be a notice of transportation master plan that we would publish. And there would be a 30-day public review period of the documents. We would update the documents with any prior changes. And then we would return to council to approve master plan after we do those updates. And then you begin implementation, and we do have a few notes on monitoring the implementation of as well. And these documents we put on the study webpage, which is listed there. That concludes the presentation.
Let's start with you, Frank, and then anyone else? Oh, okay, Councillor Heffernan. I'll just turn it off now and we'll go in that order.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of questions. One is, I live in Delaware. So Kamoka Killer has developed, you have the wellness center there. Glendon will be upgraded with bike path, pedestrian path. I've often thought, and people always ask me, is there any consideration for connecting Delaware with Kamoka? People want to bike, they want to walk. It's not that far. So maybe you can answer that. Is there any consideration on the, no?
This connections for those types of walking and cycling connections would be through the county roads, and that would be through the county cycling master plan is where you would see those connections, not necessarily through the local road network.
Okay, so thanks for punting that away, Andrew. So the other thing, if you look at goal number 5, where you go pedestrians actions, and you're saying, you know, the one point that is contentious is Springer Road in Victoria in Delaware. I mean, super contentious. And the county slapped up, you know, I understand what they do, but they're always going to say no to me for the last 18 years. We can't do it. You're going up a hill. I understand that. So today it's a school crossing because there's school crossing signs there. Nobody will let their kids cross there to go to school. They drive them to school because of the sheer danger of it. So you're saying if we can bring this to a pedestrian crossover, this could have lights and push buttons, but it's dependent on the development and the employment lands. Can you talk to that?
Chair, councilors, I wouldn't say it's contingent on the development of the employment lands for implementation. We would suggest that it's a critical linkage between the two neighborhoods because of the separation of Longwoods Road. So I would recommend advancing in advance of development of the employment lands for a pedestrian crossover there.
So what you're saying is I'm planning, I should talk to the county engineer immediately in the new year.
That would be a good start, but that would be a collaboration between the county and ourselves. We would certainly work with them hand in hand to advocate for the pedestrian crossing there. I believe the county has relaxed some of their PXO installation criteria and requirements, and they're a little bit more flexible now. So I believe they would be more amenable to considering the installation.
Bold statement, Andrew. Okay, I'll move on to the next thing. Yeah, and thank you for that. So there's more amenability to doing this now. I'm interested in the carriage road on ramp to the 402. Okay, that's a good spot to do it. If this was to be implemented, is all the cost absorbed by the county and the province? Is that what, no, it's us too?
Cost share, the proportion of the cost share would have to be worked out between the three parties.
Thanks very much. I was a little harsh on you. Thanks very much.
To the answer, Andrew. So, the transportation master plan, I like a lot of, well, actually I like all of it. But, I have some questions. I do like the fact that we're gonna remove, it's suggested to work with, a lot of it has to do with the county, right? To remove those school crossing signs because they make no sense. Nobody, like Frank said, nobody's gonna use them for school crossing. I'm really happy to hear about the pedestrian crossover at Lower Ridge and I think it's Bowman. But yeah, there's a lot of pedestrians at Rock. It has actually 4 lanes when you count the turning lanes. So it's really active there. But I have a question. How on earth do you plan to build a sidewalk or a cycling lane from Irvington across the bridge through the speed limits that we have existing to Oxford School?
Through the chair, great question. I think we would be looking to implement something with initial. I do recognize that the speeds are higher because of course the speed limit is higher, but we would be looking to implement something within the existing right of way, and it would likely be a combination of working with the county to get lower speed limits to allow for a safer crossing of the Oxbow Creek. Alternatively, it would be a separate structure, but I believe that would be far too costly to consider.
Yeah, and okay, yeah, I sort of figured that it's pie in the sky at the moment. So applying the mitigating measures for collisions and also safety improvements for speeding and what have you. Like, is there any new things that we can do there to stop collisions and stop speeding? Or at least reduce it?
Through the chair, another great question. Thank you. Speeding is a challenging for the municipality. I would say based off of our recent speed radar results that you've seen sort of the last 2 years, the bulk of the speeding was on county roads. So we are challenged in what we can do as a staff and a municipality to sort of enforce or change the speeding along those roads. It has to be something that we work with the county on as partners. So we do deploy our portable speed radar trailers to help that along the county roads. But as it relates to the municipal roads, generally speaking, speeding isn't very high. We don't have a lot of instances of speeding, and sometimes I do believe it's a perception of speeding because when we go out there and measure the speeds and provide the results back to residents, there's not typically a large speeding problem. So you know, it's working with the county again on sort of implementing some speed mitigation measures and looking at alternatives. It could be road design through urban areas and things like that. So that's where I really see the focus of our efforts on trying to work with the county on reducing speeding. As it relates to collisions, as Anna mentioned, the bulk of the collisions are with wildlife, almost 30% of it, if I remember correctly, which is quite high. So it's a different mitigation measures as it relates to dealing with wildlife collisions. So you know, things that we could consider on collision prone areas are wildlife fencing, in this example, you know, putting something up to physically prevent animals from entering the roadway where we have a high instance of animal collisions. It could be signage with additional warning lights as well, you know, something that's a little bit lower cost to implement, a little bit easier to implement. So those are the types of measures we're looking at when we're talking about collision mitigation. We do have some collisions at the intersections, but again, the bulk of the serious collisions are typically at county roadways, not so much in the local roadways.
Sorry. If I could also add that as we were doing collision analysis, and the collision data is a few years old now because the more recent data doesn't allow us to break down the collisions by type. As we were looking to see what might have contribute to these collisions and potential mitigating measures. We can see at times that municipality actually has made some recent improvements toward increasing safety at those locations. Some of the other mitigating measures that we recommended, including painting stop lines to just help make the stop area more visible, providing some additional clearance and clearing some vegetation to improve visibility, which could help with wildlife and visibility in general, increasing shoulder widths in a few instances, that sort of thing.
Through Madam Mayor to Andrew, I realize they're starting to make wider pavements on the road for bicycles, but do they factor in the type of traffic on the road? And I asked the question because out our way a year or two ago, not in our municipality, the next one, the county did Petty Street, and that's a high truck. Right, like it's trucks go down that road continually, and I always thought trucks and bicycles were really a very good combination. So I don't know, like when you factor that wider pave, do you factor in the type of traffic on the road?
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. The design guidelines by the province do have factors such as total volumes and also the speeds and the types of vehicles on the road. We didn't want to, I think we would like to encourage the county to follow those design guides as well. We just stayed away from going too far that way in the study. Yeah.
Thank you through, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your presentation. I just have a question about the school crossing. So you only have 3 suggestions that Kamuka Road wasn't included in your study?
Yeah, so we looked at all the roads within the municipality, and a number of those crossings were identified based off of public feedback, not so much that they weren't specific to the county or anything like that. So they were highlighted through the public consultation as priority areas. And that's how they sort of generated that these would be good locations for pedestrian crossings. I would note that Kamoka Road does have one existing pedestrian crossing.
Lines on the road, not near the corner, that one? There is a lot of public input, maybe just not the right venue for your transportation study is what I'm thinking has probably happened, because I do get a lot of feedback about that. Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Okay, well, in that case, thank you for the presentation. There's a lot to digest here too. And as I think was pointed out, some of this is work that has to happen in collaboration and shared roadways and responsibilities. So we look forward to the next phase then and see what happens. Thank you very much for your time. And we can, I guess, move on to the next item, which is finish it. Right, okay. So just a second, I can. All right, there's no correspondence. No. All right, so we have one bylaw tonight, and that is, oh, come on. It's stuck. Okay, so it's bylaw number 126. Where is it? 2023. Oh, there it is. 2023, number 126. It's a bylaw to adopt and confirm all actions and proceedings of the Council of Municipality Middlesex Centre at the council meeting held on December 13th, 2023. We would thank you, Councillor Shipley and Councillor Brewers, all in favor? And that is carried. And then we need a motion to adjourn at 7:19. No, you did that already, sorry. Councillor Gates and Councillor Arts, thank you very much, all in favor? And we stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. It's interesting.